Under the sands of Egypt lie 25 granite containers, each weighing 100 tons. No engineer today can explain how they were made. In India stands an iron pillar that has refused to rust for 16 centuries, while modern steel fails in years. In Iraq, they found a battery assembled 2,000 years before Volta. These objects do not fit textbooks because the textbooks were written by people who never saw them. Today we will examine 7 real ancient discoveries, each one looking as if it was left behind by travelers from the future. And we begin with the heaviest mystery in the literal sense. All 7 items can be touched by hand. Each is kept in a real museum. Each one shatters the familiar picture of the past. Under the sands of Egypt lie 25 granite containers, each weighing 100 tons. No engineer in the world can explain how they were made. Egypt, Saqqara, 1850. French archaeologist Auguste Mariette noticed a stone sphinx sticking out of the sand northwest of the Pyramid of Djoser. He excavated an entire avenue of such sphinxes. He realized they led straight to an underground structure. His team had to use dynamite. The passages were sealed tight. Behind the stone walls opened a labyrinth of long tunnels cut directly into the limestone. In the largest gallery, on both sides of the corridor, stood 25 giant boxes of black and pink granite. Each box 4 meters long, 2.5 meters wide, 3.3 meters high. The lid alone weighed 30 tons. The total mass of each container approached 100 tons. This is the weight of a fully loaded railway car hidden in a tight underground niche. When Mariette opened one with explosives, inside was nothing but emptiness and perfectly smooth walls. Official science calls this place the Serapeum and claims it buried sacred Apis bulls. The problem is that not a single open box contained any bull remains or traces of mummification. Instead, they revealed something far more disturbing than mummies: inhuman precision in stoneworking. Engineer Christopher Dunn, who spent 49 years in high-tech manufacturing, measured the internal surfaces of 2 boxes. He used an industrial gauge with a tolerance of 2/10,000ths of an inch. The walls proved flat to a level achieved only on computer-controlled machines. The corners were held exactly at 90 degrees. The radius in the corners measured just 4 millimeters. When Dunn asked an American company to reproduce such a box from a single piece of granite, they answered directly. Even with unlimited budget, they would have to assemble it from 6 separate slabs. The ancient craftsmen carved each container from one solid monolith quarried in Aswan 800 kilometers from Saqqara. The hardness of most boxes reaches 6 on the Mohs scale. Some are made of diorite, which is even harder. The tunnels are so narrow that 2 people can barely pass each other. Science stays silent on how the 100-ton blocks were turned at right angles in the corridors and lowered into niches with a 40-centimeter gap. There was simply no room for levers or work crews. The ancient Egyptians officially had no hydraulics. One unfinished box still stands in the middle of the tunnel. It looks as if the builders abandoned it halfway and left forever. Crudely scratched hieroglyphs on the outer walls sharply contrast with the mirror-like polish inside. It seems the inscriptions were added by completely different people thousands of years after the containers themselves were created. If you now feel that ordinary channels tell the story too flatly, subscribe. Here we dig where the textbooks end. All 7 objects are real and stored in museums you can visit tomorrow. They do not require aliens for explanation. But each one demands we acknowledge an uncomfortable fact. Our ancestors possessed knowledge we are only rediscovering after millennia. How do you think surgical precision was needed for a bull's coffin? Write your opinion in the comments. We move from the underground galleries of Egypt to the seabed of the Mediterranean. In 1901, Greek sponge divers were caught in a storm off the island of Antikythera. The captain sent a diver down to use the time. He surfaced in panic, shouting about dead bodies at 60 meters depth. The captain descended himself. He saw not a cemetery, but the remains of an ancient Roman ship that sank around 5 BC. The dead bodies turned out to be marble statues lying in the sand for 2 millennia. Among the sculptures and scattered coins lay an inconspicuous piece of green bronze. For 2 years it gathered dust in a box at the National Museum in Athens. Then politician Spirit and Stays noticed a crack. Inside gleamed a small, perfectly cut gear in an object more than 2,000 years old. Newspapers wrote about the sensation. Skeptics cried fake. But X-ray tomography in the 2000s put everything in place. Inside hid a system of 37 bronze gears, the largest 13 centimeters in diameter with 223 teeth. The device, the size of a laptop, calculated the positions of the sun, the moon, and 5 planets. It predicted solar and lunar eclipses. It tracked the cycles of the Olympic Games and showed the phases of the moon. European science reached such calculation accuracy only half a century later. The mechanism accounted for the moon accelerating and slowing on different parts of its elliptical orbit. For this, 2 gears were mounted on an offset axis inside. This was a true differential, the same node that lets car wheels rotate at different speeds on turns. The teeth of each wheel were cut with precision impossible for a hand file. Triangular teeth stood identical as if stamped. Inscriptions on the rear panel, read recently thanks to tomography, turned out to be detailed operating instructions. Lost pointers on the front panel carried colored balls, fiery red for Mars, golden for the sun. Researchers from University College London called the original the work of a genius that combined Babylonian astronomy and the mathematics of Plato's Academy. Whoever assembled this device understood the cosmos at a level the rest of humanity reached only after 20 centuries. Roman orator Cicero in the 1st century BC described similar devices created by Archimedes in Syracuse. So the Antikythera mechanism was not unique. It belonged to an entire tradition of which only one specimen reached us. The Greeks packed the sky into a bronze box. Indian blacksmiths around the same era tamed iron. In the courtyard of the Qutb Mosque in Delhi stands a column 7 meters 20 centimeters high and weighing more than 6 tons. The Sanskrit inscription links it to King Chandragupta and the second of the Gupta dynasty in the 1st century AD. For 16 centuries, the column has stood in the open air under monsoon rains and scorching heat, and it shows almost no rust. Ordinary iron in Delhi's climate becomes covered with corrosion in mere years. The Eiffel Tower is repainted every 7 years. In the 10th century, a cannonball hit the column. It withstood the blow, leaving only a dent at 4 meters height. The riddle was tackled since 1912 when British chemists first took samples. The answer came after 91 years when Professor Balasubramaniam from the Indian Institute of Technology in Kanpur published his study. His team used X-ray diffraction, electrochemical tests, and microscopy. They finally understood what happens on the metal surface. The iron of the column contains about 1% phosphorus. At the same time, it has almost no sulfur or magnesium. This composition triggers the formation of a crystalline iron phosphate layer 1 millimeter thick. This layer acts as an invisible shield that self-heals cracks with every cycle of wetting and drying. In essence, ancient blacksmiths created a natural analog of stainless steel 15 centuries before its invention. They used forge welding, heating, and hammering the iron to preserve the phosphorus without instruments and without textbooks. Modern metallurgy still has not reproduced the exact combination of composition and durability of this column. 6 tons of iron without a single gram of paint stand in the open air and win the battle that our entire industry loses. From which country are you watching? Write in the comments. The Indians conquered iron. Their contemporaries, the Romans, conquered light. In the British Museum behind armored glass stands the Lycurgus cup, the only complete example of dichroic glass from antiquity. If light falls from the front, the cup appears green like jade. If it passes through the wall from behind, it flares ruby red. On the surface is carved a scene from myth. King Lycurgus entangled in grapevines while the god Dionysus watches his death. The carving is done in the cage cup technique. But the color-changing trick is hidden not in the carving, but in the glass structure itself. The answer came in the 90s when fragments of similar Roman glass were examined under an electron microscope. Inside were found particles of a gold and silver alloy about 50 nanometers in size, 1,000 times smaller than a grain of salt. When light touches these inclusions, the electrons of the metal begin to oscillate and change the wavelength. Silver is responsible for the green color in reflection and gold for the red in transmission. This effect is called plasmon resonance, and today it is used in sensors and holographic technologies. Roman masters ground gold and silver into particles invisible to the eye and fused them into the glass in a precise proportion. Scientists from Cambridge only in 2014 managed to reproduce a similar effect. They created arrays of 16 million nanoparticles per millimeter. The Romans achieved the same 16 centuries ago, without microscopes, without lasers, and without optics textbooks. The secret of production died with the empire. The Lycurgus cup remained the only full witness. Today, researchers are trying to use this ancient principle to create ultra-sensitive detectors for water pollution. Technology born for a feast table may save millions of lives 17 centuries after its invention. The Romans controlled light, while their contemporaries in the East perhaps controlled electricity. In 1936, during railway construction near Baghdad, workers uncovered an ancient burial. It lay close to the ruins of Ctesiphon, the capital of the Parthian kingdom. Among the finds was a clay jar 14 centimeters high with a copper cylinder inside. In the center of the cylinder hung an iron rod, not touching the walls. The neck was sealed with a bitumen stopper. Wilhelm Koenig, director of the Iraq National Museum, immediately recognized the design of a galvanic cell. Two metals with different electrochemical potentials separated by space for liquid electrolyte. Traces of corrosion on the walls indicated the presence of acid, most likely vinegar or grape juice. American scientist Willard Gray built an exact copy and filled it with grape juice. The device actually produced electric current. Such a jar could generate about 1 volt. Several connected jars would give enough current for electroplating jewelry. Similar vessels were found in neighboring Seleucia. Next to them lay bronze and iron needles. Roman physician Scribonius Largus in the 1st century described treating gout with an electric ray applied to the patient's feet. The idea of using electricity in medicine was familiar to the ancient world long before science gave it a name. The Baghdad battery predates Volta's official invention by at least 16 centuries. In 2003, it was stolen from the museum during the invasion of Iraq. Its fate remains unknown. We lost perhaps the oldest electrical device in history and cannot even conduct modern analysis. We return to Egypt, but this time to an object that fits on a dining table and looks like a part from a machine shop. In the same 1936, archaeologist Walter Emery opened the tomb of official Sabu in the Saqqara necropolis. Next to the skeleton lay a broken stone disc 61 centimeters in diameter. It was carved from metasilt stone, a fragile rock that flakes at the slightest careless blow. 3 curved blades converge to a central hub. From above, the disc is indistinguishable from the impeller of an industrial pump. The tomb age is about 5,000 years, from the first dynasty when tools were made of stone and soft copper. How from a rock that crumbles from a clumsy touch where thin blades cut without a single chip? No one can explain. An enthusiast printed a copy on a 3-dimensional printer and placed it in a housing with a shaft. The copy began to pump water powerfully, working as a classic centrifugal impeller. Without the housing, the spinning disc created a stable water vortex of such force that coincidence of shape is ruled out. Airbus engineers also printed copies and confirmed the aerodynamic properties, though the disc cannot serve as a propeller. Egyptologist Cyril Aldred noted that the disc shape points to a copy of a much older metal original. If the Sabu disc is really a model of a lost mechanism, we face a trace of engineering thought that vanished before the start of recorded history. 5,000 years ago, someone in the Nile Valley knew how to pump water by centrifugal force. Then this knowledge dissolved in the sand together with the name of its inventor. The last discovery does not hide underground, but stands before thousands of tourists every day near the Chinese city of Xi'an. In 1974, peasants digging a well stumbled upon fragments of a clay figure. This began the discovery of the terracotta army, more than 8,000 life-size warriors of fired clay. Each figure is human height. No face repeats, although only 8 basic molds were used for heads. They guarded the tomb of the first emperor of unified China, Qin Shi Huang, on whose construction 700,000 workers were mobilized. Less than 1% of the complex has been excavated so far. But the sensation came not from the statues, but from their weapons. From the pits, more than 40,000 bronze arrowheads, swords up to 95 centimeters long, spears and crossbow mechanisms were extracted. After 2,200 years underground, the blades shone as if forged yesterday. The edges remained sharp. For 40 years, scientists believed the secret lay in a chromium coating. Traces of chromium were found on the bronze. Chromium plating was patented in Europe only in the 20th century. The find seemed incredible. A joint study by University College London and the Terracotta Army Museum in 2019 overturned the theory. The chromium on the swords turned out to be contamination from the lacquer that covered the wooden handles and bamboo shafts. It had no relation to the preservation of the bronze itself. The real secret lay in the bronze composition with high tin content and in the properties of the local soil. The alkaline loess with fine particles and low organic content created an ideal environment for metal conservation. Replicas of the bronze buried in the local soil remained untouched after 4 months of extreme tests. The same samples in British soil became covered with thick corrosion in the same period. Masters of the Qin dynasty 22 centuries ago selected an alloy and environment that worked as an ideal preservative. They did not know the words electrochemistry or alkaline corrosion, but the result of their work outlived all empires that followed. 40,000 blades lay in the darkness waiting for their hour like an order that no one canceled. We have passed through the underground labyrinths of Egypt and descended to the bottom of the Mediterranean. We stood by the iron pillar in Delhi and looked inside a Roman cup where nanoparticles dance. We held a 2,000-year-old battery and spun a 5,000-year-old stone turbine. Each of these finds is truly documented and kept in a museum you can visit tomorrow. They do not need to be taken on faith. It is enough to buy a plane ticket, enter, and see with your own eyes. None requires aliens for explanation, but each requires recognizing an inconvenient fact. Our ancestors possessed knowledge that we rediscover after millennia. We call these breakthroughs while they perhaps called them ordinary craft. Progress is not a straight line upward, but a spiral where each turn begins from the same ignorance. The real mystery is not how they did it, but why we forgot it. What surprised you most from what you heard today? Write in the comments.